Hello, YouTube. Welcome to another video on my channel. I know it's been a minute. The semester has been very grueling. But today I like to pick back up on a video series that I started a couple months back, my pair programming series, where I invite a bunch of guests, do a couple episodes where we talk about their personal lives, their work, professional lives, etc., all the while we're adding features to an application that we'll be building throughout the entire podcast series. So I've actually already done two episodes, maybe three, I think two episodes of this series, but I decided to take a step back in order to take steps forward so that you guys can get an idea of what the entire journey or the entire software development process looks like. Now, for this series, the focus is not going to be to do things, technically perfect, technically sound. It's just to give people a glimpse of what it's like to build software. And so when taking a step back, I've decided to go back to the level of schema design, just figuring out what the schema of the application is going to look like, because this is usually the first and probably I don't know if I'd say most important, but one of the most important steps when it comes to building an application is just figuring out all what your data members and entities and all that kind of stuff are, what they look like, how they interact with each other. That's what we're going to be doing today. And so the guest that I've invited today, he happens to be a software engineer at Intel. He has also worked as a software engineer at Cummins in the past, and he also happens to be my brother. So give it up for Chris Ibe Kyocha.
Hey everyone, it's really nice to be here, and I'm looking forward to today's episode.
All right, yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been kind of hard to kind of get guests for these initial episodes. I've reached out to a couple people. I think I have so you today, and then I think there's one other guest I'm gonna have next week, and then after that, beyond that, I'm gonna have to figure out who I'm gonna invite. So yeah, so like I said earlier, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on the schema, and we're working in a collaborative tool, design tool called Mira. We're just going to use it as a way to help us draw or scope out the pieces of the schema, the entities, etc., stuff that we've done before in the past.
Mhm.
So yeah, are you ready? Let's
Always
get
ready.
this money. I don't know. So
Uh,
it kind of feels weird to be talking like this,
uh,
because typically whenever we talk, or whenever I talk to anyone, any one of my family members, obviously yourself included, I typically talk in the accent, talk like this instead of, with the American accent, etc. And it
mhm.
makes me curious as to, being being individuals who are obviously from elsewhere,
Mhm.
from like a different country, et cetera, immigrating here. Just the level of code switching that goes into the workplace, like, when you're at work versus when you're talking with your family or close friends, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just curious to know, as like, how have you encountered code switching in your professional careers thus far?
Mhm. Code switching. I've actually never heard it called that, but I mean, I understand the concept, and it's kind of funny because I feel like usually when I'm at work, I have to speak a certain way, and when I'm around family and friends, I have to speak it. Well, not I have to. I speak a different way, and my brain is so used to it that if you put me in a space where there's a family member or a friend or someone I'm comfortable with, and there's a coworker or something, my brain kind of gets stuck in between, trying to decide how to speak. So I end up having like a mixture of both accents.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like mixed up, and yeah, it's actually pretty cool and pretty funny,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. No, the same thing happens to me too. It's just kind of like hard to figure out, oh, do I, speak in this way?
Yeah.
Like what's the coworker gonna think? Like, oh wow, I didn't know this person talked like
In
this.
some ways, it's actually out of my control because I don't really
Right.
think about it. It just kind of happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really control it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of like a merge of both the way I speak at work or
Right.
around coworkers and the way I speak around family. It's just somewhere like in between.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, what we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be designing a schema for this app called Chat Map. So it's a very simple concept. So it's gonna be a map view where users can come in and then create chat rooms based on certain geographical locations. So like, let's say, I don't know, Gold's Gym at XYZ Street or whatever. They create a chat there. Other users who frequent that gym can see the chat, and then they can join it, and then they can chat with all the other people that happen to, frequent that gym as well, or just belong to that group chat. So the basic entities would be like chats, users, obviously messages, et cetera, et cetera. Other features, we're gonna have is things like authentication, um, messaging, like a map, and that's pretty much it. So it's up to us to design the schema for this kind of application. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds like has some similarities to Snapchat. So like
Right.
diet Snapchat. But
Exactly. Diet Snapchat.
yeah, but without the snap part of it. But yeah,
Exactly.
it's exciting. I'm looking forward to the design.
So I'm curious to know, do you find yourself doing, or have you ever done this kind of work at your current position at Intel, like schema
So
design, et cetera, et cetera?
so far not yet. I'm not into design yet, although that's kind of the route I'll kind of like to take. I would like to do a lot more design, but as of right now, no, I don't do design. I do mostly, so I take design from the designers, and then I do more of implementation than design.
Hmm. Okay. And implementation, what are we talking? I don't know if you're at liberty to share what specific frameworks or tools you use, if it's open source or like in-house. But yeah, I guess, on your team, in your work, do you use open source or in-house tools? Um,
Mostly, because it's a lot of hardware programming.
okay.
So mostly our code base is mostly Python and C Sharp.
Okay.
And then we have some in-house created um, and should I call them frameworks now that kind of use a combination of Python that
Mm.
runs C sharp on Python,
Oh,
if that
wow.
makes sense. Yeah, we have certain names for those. But yeah, but that's kind of what we use. A lot of the stuff we use is not open source per se, but as far as the languages we use, they are
They are
open
open
source.
source. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. Running C sharp on Python. So like what? Because both those languages can kind of be used for scripting.
Mhm.
So it's like, I don't know, just trying to imagine, what would the Python be, an interpreter for the C sharp code, or it's just kind of, it's interesting to think about.
So it's so the compiler that actually does it was designed in-house by Intel.
Ah,
Okay,
that
so
makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly. So then it finds a way. We call it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the actual names. I don't know how personal to Intel it is,
Yeah.
but what it does is it just takes the Python code and the C sharp codes, combines them together, compiles both of them together, and then
Wow.
deploys them to the tools that pretty much tests all the chips Intel creates before
Mm.
the chips go out to the customers.
Yeah, and this topic, or it kind of reminds me about the difference between what it's like working with big versus small companies. In this is something I've experienced in some of the internships that I've done so far. It's like when you're working in a smaller company, a lot of the things you're using is like open source code that other
Mhm.
people have written, but then in-house it's like, or rather, if it's a bigger company, it's usually in-house, where like they design their own systems, they design their own like compilers, which is like insane, like the company I work for right now.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a medium size, but nothing to that level of where it's like, oh, they designing so many things of their own. Well, I can only speak for the team I'm on. I don't know about other teams, but yeah, I think that's pretty
Mhm.
interesting. What in your background, like, how have you experienced that in like the different companies you've worked at, in terms of like where the level of customization they go to for like the tools they use, et cetera, et cetera.
So in my career, I've only worked in two companies, Cummins and Intel, like you said earlier, and they're relatively big companies. So usually a lot of the stuff we use is designed in-house.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I could go back in time and advise myself, I would advise myself to back in college to get an internship or a few internships in smaller companies. And maybe my first job out of college should be in like a startup or a smaller company because I feel like there's more room to learn a lot more. As far as by learn, I mean to learn open source stuff that can be transferable from one company to the other
Mm-hmm.
easily. I feel like at the beginning of your career, it's a good time to do something like that. And then maybe your second job, you want to shoot for a much bigger company. So if I
Mm-hmm.
could go back in time, that's the route I'll take. But as of so far, I've only worked in relatively big to
Mm-hmm.
mid-sized companies.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You talked about like one of the downsides of that, working for a bit, which I've known of, but it's not something that I constantly keep in my mind. But it is important. It's like the idea of like not getting pigeonholed, right? So it's like you can be working for this big company who they build everything that they do in house, right? So you come in and you learn those things. But let's say for one reason or the other, you want to switch companies, or God forbid you get laid off or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Now, you can't take those skills and apply it elsewhere, because it only exists inside of that big company, which is a downside that I don't think many people might be aware of, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, we've been doing a lot of talking. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's start this thing. All right. So I guess based on what was discussed earlier, chat map, there's users, there's chats, there's geolocations, et cetera. I guess we can start with users. So, and these three things, or we're just going to use, they're like reusable elements. This will be for the entities, this will be for relationships, and this, I'm not sure what it would be for just yet, but the default template had it. So I thought I'd just keep it and see what it'd be good for. Okay, so I'm going
Hmm.
to copy and paste one of these, and let's move it down here. And this will be our user object, or entity rather. Let's increase the font a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Uh, yeah, that's good.
Yep, that looks good.
Okay. So we have our user. So let's first start off with like the authentication. I guess. So obviously we're gonna need well, let's say user. Yeah, we just call him user. We can, for the profile, we can just call it profile. So cool. Let's see. So what do we need? Where's the mouse? Okay. Do they have bullet points on here? Yeah, that's the thing. I've only ever used this tool like infrequently, in like a couple of few part-time gigs I've done. So it might take me a minute to get the hang of. Oh, there we go. Bullet list. Yay. All right. So the first thing we're gonna need is an email, right?
Yep.
Because most apps today, email password sign in is the default.
Hmm.
Then password. What am I doing? Why is it
So
doing
a
this?
lot of uh,
Go ahead.
so a lot of apps today they let you like sign in with a Gmail or sign in with a
Mm-hmm.
um, Facebook or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that be compared to this?
To this.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on what services, what auth services you use. But typically, even when you do sign in with Facebook or Gmail or any of these other, I think they call them OAuth providers,
Hmm.
um, you still have an email, right? So the
Correct.
email that you use to sign up for those accounts would get transferred. Password is a
Hmm.
bit more murky, in that you wouldn't necessarily use a password for the system that you're using the Google to sign into. I don't know the
Hmm.
details of it too much, but I think the idea is like once you use one of these authentication methods, it takes you to like the official portal of that OAuth provider or whatever. And
Correct.
then
Yeah.
once you log in there, right,
Yeah.
it's gonna give the application that you're signing into some sort of token, verified token that's okay. This is this user and this is their information. And in that
Correct.
case, because the whole point of authentication is um, to be able to verify that this person is a user, right? That's the
Correct.
whole point of
Correct.
email and password. So if you're having a third party do it for you, then you don't necessarily need that password
Yeah.
element as much.
True. True.
So yeah, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, simple
Hmm.
explanation. But okay, so we have user, email, password. What else could be needed for the sake of logging in? I think that's just it,
Yeah, that's good
right?
enough. I don't know,
Yeah.
some support phone number.
Phone number.
So, but yeah, that's not a
Yeah.
necessity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's keep it light for now. In future episodes, we might come back and expand some of these things. So let me group this. Uh, Cool. And then I'll just take this. Bloop. So we have our user entity. Now let's go ahead and do a profile. Can you see what I'm doing clearly, like real time?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. But I'm just wondering if the font might be too small, just in case someone might be watching the mobile.
Right.
As far as
Um,
the email and password, I don't know how well they
yeah.
might be able to see
So
it.
I'm recording my screen so I can zoom in a bit more. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay.
hopefully
Okay.
that'll help. But yeah. Okay, so for the user profile, so these are users who are engaging in chats, right, with each
Mhm.
other. So if you think about a chat, what is like some things that is required to make it be a chat, or at least what pieces of information from a user is required for a chat? Um,
I'll probably say something like your username,
okay,
um, some kind of profile image URL,
okay,
um, and I feel like yeah, I feel like those are good enough to identify a user, at least from the outward, from looking outward, not looking inward. So inward,
right.
there has to be some kind of like user ID, so you can
Mm,
uniquely identify. Well, I
mm,
guess that could be the email, right?
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, but typically in like database systems, and I think you touched on having that user ID is like is good to have, right? Because for one reason or the other, the email is like sensitive information, and you may not
correct.
necessarily want to be passing that around in like HTTP calls, for example, to your
Exactly.
database, stuff like that. So yeah, I think you are correct. Let's do the user ID. So we're just gonna say an ID here. Um, and then here we're gonna say user ID. Um, cool, cool. And so the user ID would be used as a connection. Would be a way to connect. Oh, I should change this to profile. Would be a way to connect profiles to users. Cool. All right. So I think that's fine for the user and profile entity. What do you think?
Yeah, yep, looks good to me.
Awesome. All right, so why don't we go ahead and do like a chat entity. Um, so this will represent the chat room essentially.
Mm,
And so, like we said, the chat rooms here are based on geolocations. So latitude and longitude coordinates, just to keep it simple. So I guess that's like one of the first things we would need to know. Uh, let's change this to chat. I'm just gonna call it lat, and then LNG for longitude. And I guess a name, right?
yep, you
Um,
should probably should
yeah,
have a room ID too.
yeah, exactly. Uh, should have an identifier. And then so what you mentioned is really good, because some people might say that, oh, what's the point of having a separate identifier, right? The latitude and longitude is sufficient for
Hmm.
identifying a geographical location, right? And then it comes down to me, I think like it comes down to having a brain fart now. It comes down to the level of features of how you want your app to be. Because like let's say all you're using to uniquely identify a place is a latitude and longitude. What happens
Hmm.
if the place is like a building? Some there's like some tall buildings where it's like different office spaces or different spaces in each floor. So all those
Hmm.
places would have the same latitude and longitude location, right? So that means
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
if we were to uniquely identify a chat just by latitude and longitude alone, then places like that would be subject to having just one chat, regardless of if there's different entities inside of them, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
unique ID is important,
Sure.
as
I agree.
separate from latitude and longitude for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I know maybe like I was just thinking along the line. So if you want to uniquely identify a location, so there's the
Mm,
latitude and longitude, like you said, but there's also the elevation.
right.
So there's a third, but in this case, it would be much better to use the ID than an
Mm,
elevation because the elevation just adds an unnecessary layer of complication
mm, right.
if we did decide to go that route.
Right. That's true. Okay. Yeah. So far, it's looking nice. What else? I feel like, oh yeah, like a avatar or something.
Oh yeah,
Kind of like I don't
avatar.
know if you've used GroupMe at all, but it's kind of like the de facto group chat system
Hmm.
for I've only ever used it in school. Like it's been
Mhm.
like I've only as used it as a student, but it's like the de facto group messaging application for things like that, like uh, clubs and all that kind of stuff, classes too.
Yeah.
Did you was it even out when you were in college? Group me?
Yeah, it was, but I've never really used it. It
Mm,
was.
okay, gotcha. How did just out of curiosity, what was like your means of communication with other students? Yeah, where you went to college.
I I was old school. I just stuck to text mostly, group text
Mm.
and stuff. I know there's a time chat messages system like Kik came out,
Oh,
but that was more
kick.
yeah, that was mostly used for some stupid stuff.
Yeah. Yo, kick
Yeah.
was. I feel like every time somebody like I always forget about kick, and every time somebody reminds me about it, I just go back to how dumb it was. And I mean, but
Yeah, it's so
I mean, I
stupid.
wouldn't say it was dumb. It was one of those things like kind of like Vine, It's like a
Mhm.
staple of its time. It came and it went, and it
Exactly.
was,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
At some point, like you just get like bots on Kick, just like sending you random
Yeah, just bunch of
messages.
stupid adult. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Kik. Yeah,
yeah. Oh Lord.
Kik kind of reminds me of dating apps.
Right,
When dating
right.
apps started to come out, right? It was usually you give
Yeah.
them your Kik to kind of chat with them, but not give them your number.
Oh, right, right. That's true. That's true as well. Yeah. What's your
So
kick? Well, I feel like Instagram has pretty much replaced that, right? In terms of like
Instagram
if you're
has,
on a
yeah,
dating app and you don't want to give your number out, you just do
exactly.
Instagram.
Give you Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a period of time, it was like Snapchat. Um, but I
Hmm.
think Snapchat is dying now because like I don't think I've posted a Snap story in about 4 or 3 months or something like that.
Hmm.
I just use Instagram as my platform for posting stories and connecting with
I
people, et
agree.
cetera, et
I
cetera.
agree. I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Facebook has been trying to buy Snapchat, but Evan Spiegel keeps saying no
yeah,
because he wants to build it out himself. But I'm hoping he sells though.
yeah. Reminds me of that Thanos meme, like, fine, I'll do it myself. That's Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Marvel and stuff, what's your favorite Marvel movie that you've watched this year?
Oh man, Marvel this year. Wow, that's a well. It's the year just started, so I haven't really
Oh
watched any
no, my
Marvel
bad.
movies.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Got me on a technicality.
Yeah, yeah, I know
I
what you
meant
mean. I know what
last
you
year.
mean. Yeah, just being hard. I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So last year, man, there was a few movies, good movies. I know I haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home yet,
Mm,
which is what I really want to see. I've heard so many good things about it. Um, I'll say it has to be the one I'm really looking forward to. But all
mm-hmm.
time, my favorite Marvel movie is probably Endgame or
Yeah,
Black
Endgame.
Panther. Pretty
Endgame was
close.
awesome. Endgame was
Yeah,
super
pretty close.
awesome. Black Panther. Yeah, Black Panther was very cool too. I think it's one of
Yeah,
the higher ones.
yeah, I agree. It was just so it's just an iconic movie that just made a huge shift in culture.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's always gonna
that's
have a
that's
place.
so true. Like I remember when I first got to this country, and being African. I came here
Mhm.
in seventh grade, and well, I'm not sure if you know, but because you came here at a much older age than me, but middle schoolers, high schoolers can be real big. I'll probably bleep that
Yeah.
out. And so when they heard you came from Africa, their reaction was, "Oh, Africa, ooh 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 ah ah monkey," doing all that stuff, right? And so
Yeah,
I just think it's so funny how like one movie completely changed. Not everybody's doing like this, from like
exactly.
from
Every
criticizing from criticizing
yeah,
African culture, talking about some we live in trees and all this stuff. Now
yeah,
everybody's trying to, oh, what's my African? Like you see Cardi B, oh, my African name is this, whatever. Like
exactly.
just
They're
trying
all
to
trying to trace their roots back to Africa.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
don't know.
all Black Panther. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
just
Like
a
it
huge.
yeah. I mean, it's a good thing, obviously, because you do want people to be what's the word now? More open-minded and diverse in their
Exactly.
thinking, but at the same time it's like the hypocrisy of it, how it's like, oh, some people are doing it just for a trend, just because, oh, it's
Yeah,
trendy, that kind of stuff. But I feel like with everything there's always going to be, like, every kind of cultural shift, there's always going to be people that are doing it because they believe in it, and then people that are doing it because it's like the latest fashion to talk
exactly.
about. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a super iconic movie. Super iconic movie.
Mm.
So too bad. What's his name had to die.
Chadwick Boseman, yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
unfortunate. Yeah. Very. I heard that they might be giving the role of Black Panther to like either his sister,
I hope
Shuri.
they do. I hope she gets it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I'm not even sure if in the comics there was a female Black Panther,
Yeah,
although
I think in the comics she did. She picked up the
okay.
mantle at some time in the comics.
Okay, okay, yeah. So that's awesome then. I mean,
Yeah.
not awesome that he died, but that it can continue. All right, cool. So let's get back to the chat map entity situation we have going on over here. Okay, I think we have, as far as the entities go, I think we have almost all of them. I think the only thing missing now is the chat itself, or rather the message, chat messages themselves.
The message is okay. So as far as chat, do we want a list of the users that are part of the chat? Do we need to maintain that somewhere, or maybe a list of the admins or the creator of the
Hmm,
chats in case he's gonna have a higher, um,
that's a good
more
question.
rights than
Yeah,
and also I don't know if you want to move the screen a little bit more to the center so I can see the bottom
where? Like,
of the yeah, move it a little bit up because I can't the chat buttons are all the way at the bottom. The chat
yeah. Oh, no, no, no.
entities
You
are all.
can control your view. Like if you on your mouse,
Oh,
if you right
okay.
click on your mouse, and you can drag it around and you can see
Ah,
whatever
okay.
you want to
Okay.
see.
That makes sense. Okay. So
Yeah.
we're seeing different things. Okay. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
you can play around and edit stuff here too.
Okay.
It's completely collaborative. Um,
Okay.
cool. So yeah, you mentioned a good point, keeping track of the owner or the admin of the chat, which is a very important feature. So we're gonna have like a an O or creator
Hmm.
ID, which would be a reference to the user ID.
Correct.
I'm not sure if we should. Let's just do it. Let's just mark what is going to be referenced to what,
Right. Correct.
so that it's just easier in the future to
Mhm.
read when reading. Let's drag this here. We're gonna say ref of user, and on here we're gonna add
Ref of ID.
ref of user as well,
Oh yeah, yeah.
because
Okay.
it's
Of
the
the
user
user.
entity.
Correct. 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 Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So
So
about the
reference
list
is
of
user.
users that are part of
Hmm.
that chat room.
I think that can be collapsed into a relationship between users and chats.
Oh, okay, that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing I like about design. There's no right or well, there's no one answer to it.
mhm,
There's
mhm.
a different. It's design, so literally, literally the canvas is your canvas.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And then
yeah,
there's like trade-offs to
exactly,
different things, etc., etc.
exactly.
Okay, so now let's see. Messages.
Some messages. So yes,
Just
since we're on,
message.
yeah,
It's a single
so
entity.
yeah, it's just a single message, and a
Hmm.
chat will have a collection of
A
messages,
collection
right?
of messages, exactly.
That makes sense. So yeah, since we're on the topic of messages, I was having this conversation a few days ago,
Mm.
just trying to compare Instagram and YouTube, because Instagram has like a messaging feature, but YouTube doesn't. So I was thinking, which one do you think is a bigger platform? Not necessarily a
Hmm.
bigger company, because obviously Google is technically a bigger company than Facebook.
Right.
I don't think it should be though. It is as of today. But as far as those two platforms, Facebook or Instagram specifically
Hmm.
versus YouTube, which one do you think it's a bigger platform or bigger company if they were independent companies,
Yeah.
and why?
It's so tempting to say Instagram, um,
Hmm.
just because uh, I feel like maybe in terms of like in terms of raw amount of users, I'd say YouTube. Um,
Okay.
simply because like I've had a YouTube account. Well, first of all, Google, right? If you have a
Hmm.
Gmail channel, you have a YouTube account, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
a bit cheat codes, but that's how it is, right? Uh, but I've had a YouTube account for years, but I only recently created the Instagram account that I use now, and that's like my personal one, like maybe in 2020, right? So I
Hmm.
just very recently, and that's simply just because of the type of person I am. I
Exactly.
had a lot of anxiety about getting on social media, et cetera, right? But the point I'm making with that is that, the way YouTube is set up, it's more. I feel like it's more welcoming of all different kind of types of people, because
Hmm.
the focus is on necessarily the content, and it's not necessarily, because with Instagram it's more so, there's the expectation that the norm is like everybody posts, right? And
Hmm.
that's how you interact, et cetera, et cetera. But with YouTube, it's more so, okay, just people watching. And I also
Hmm.
think that the amount of content that YouTube has versus Instagram's content is pretty much redundant. It's just pictures of people, um, you know, doing whatever. But YouTube has content on so many things, like from like gaming, like Instagram does almost nothing to capture the gaming industry, which is gigantic. But
Hmm.
YouTube does capture the gaming industry, because of the way it is. And hair and makeup, I guess maybe Instagram can capture hair and makeup.
Instagram
um
captures beauty more, I think.
yeah,
The
I'd
beauty industry is
say
more Instagram than anything.
I agree. I agree that is true. um but I just feel like YouTube also has, the capability of getting some of those people.
Hmm.
The basic point is, like, I feel like YouTube has more reach in terms of like the kind of content that it can curate and the kind of people that it can bring along. So I
Hmm.
think it's the bigger platform. What was your thought?
At first, my answer was YouTube, because I was just going off me and people around me. What do they use more? I use YouTube way more. Um,
Mm,
I use YouTube at least 5 hours a day. Just studying and learning from YouTube. I think YouTube is the greatest university ever created. But then after looking deeply into it, I think I decided Instagram was much bigger than YouTube. Here's why. The most followed account on Instagram
mm,
has almost twice the most subscribed account on YouTube. So Cristiano
wow.
Ronaldo has almost 400 million subscribers, 380. The most subscribed account on YouTube has only 200 million. That's one. I feel like Instagram, everybody contributes to it, but YouTube has is broken into two. There's creators and there's consumers. Creators are like maybe 1 or 2% of the entire population of YouTube. Just by virtue of that alone, there's less activity on YouTube than Instagram. Instagram is anybody that buys a cake is posting the cake. Anybody
Right.
that's in the gym is posting their workout. Anybody that buys a clothes that looks okay is posting that. Anybody that does anything that they think is anything is posting it. Anybody at the lake is posting. So I feel like Instagram has more users, gives the company a chance to get more data on its users, because we're going into an age where data is the new oil.
True.
Data is the most valuable commodity on earth now. No longer oil, no longer gold, is data right now. So Instagram knows where you are, knows what you had for breakfast because you probably posted it because you thought it was cool, knows what workouts you like to do in the gym because you probably posted it because you thought it was cool. Knows who your friends are, who you're hanging out with, knows what they bought, so it knows how to recommend things for you to buy.
Mm,
Uh, so I think Instagram is much bigger than YouTube. But again, I use YouTube at least 10 times more than I use Instagram. So I think if you ask a very productive, goal-oriented person, they will say YouTube. They'll say they use YouTube more. But if you walk on the street and pick a random person and ask, I think more people would say Instagram. More of the regular people would say
yeah.
Instagram. I just look back to almost every girl I dated, which one they use more, and I think they use Instagram a lot more than YouTube. But
Mm,
speaking for myself and most of the productive people I've met around work and school, they all use YouTube more.
yeah. And I think you pointed out a good an interesting point. And I'm not a social scientist. I'm not saying this is fact, but in my opinion, I think that with women in general, I think Instagram is more geared
Exactly.
toward like allowing them to post content and support, or et cetera,
Exactly.
et cetera. Whereas I feel like I've heard in the past that YouTube in general scales more male. Is that the right word? Scales?
Yeah, I agree.
Skew
Like
rather
I used to channel
skews.
100% of the people are
Yeah,
male.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that YouTube scales skews more male.
More male. Yeah.
So yeah, that also plays
So,
a
and
factor.
also, if you think about it, I had a friend who just opened a restaurant a few months ago.
Hmm.
Almost every business has an Instagram profile, but businesses
That's
typically
true.
don't have a
Have
YouTube
a
profile.
YouTube
So,
account. Yeah,
almost every business I see, they list their Instagram on their
that's
number,
true.
their email, and their Instagram. So again, so again, back when a few months ago, when I was really using YouTube a lot, I thought YouTube was a lot bigger, just from my
Right.
use and from everyone around me, because mostly productive people are around me, so they tend to use YouTube a lot more. So I came to the
Mm-hmm.
conclusion YouTube was bigger, but I went down the rabbit hole a few weeks ago. Just again, it was part of investment decision for me. I wanted to add either Facebook or Google to my investing portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to make the decision which one is bigger. But however, the pandemic was better for YouTube. YouTube grew the most during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, I didn't think I grew as much aside from the Instagram shops they introduced. I don't think they grew as much because Instagram's appeal is go out and post what you're doing that you think is cool.
Exactly.
With the pandemic, we couldn't go out; we were stuck indoors. So indoors is YouTube is record creative videos, most likely indoors and upload. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
YouTube grew so much during the pandemic. So I was asking myself the question: would things go back to normal, or is this the new normal, or are we going to end up being somewhere in between where we stay inside a lot, but yet we go outside?
Right.
So I don't know if Instagram will keep growing at the pace it has, but however, this pandemic period, YouTube has grown immensely, way more than the growth of Instagram.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't think of it on all those other points in terms of like, because for sure, like I think the engagement on Instagram is much higher than
Mhm.
YouTube, and like you mentioned, the availability, the possibility for like data collection, and all that kind of stuff that it's Facebook, they probably do.
They
Or if
definitely do.
it's Meta now, they probably
Yeah.
do. So
Mm.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Because YouTube, the only real data they get from you is what videos you watch and what videos you like.
Hmm.
That's really so. I mean, that gives them a sense of you, um, but Instagram, they get where you are, they get what workouts you're doing, you
Hmm.
just think of the last things you posted on your Instagram story or your Instagram feed, or the kind of reels you're watching, all those kind of things. So I think Instagram definitely gets more data about the user than a YouTube
Than
does.
YouTube does. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Makes sense.
But yeah, it was just me going down the rabbit hole trying to figure out what a better investment is.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So we were working on the messages or the message entity. So a
Hmm.
message should have an ID.
Yeah.
It should also have a user ID that represents the person who sent that
Who
message.
sent the message? Correct.
So let's just call it sender ID, and it's
Sender
ref.
ID should probably have content.
Right, exactly.
And I don't know if we want to be like Twitter and limit it to like 147 characters or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That might be a decision for like
For later,
a
right?
future part of the development pipeline. Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't
Um,
make or break the app. It's just more
exactly.
from a what's the word now? Say we want to get us just more from a scaling point of view.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want people like posting tons of text
Exactly.
and that kind of stuff will probably make like the scroll feed less efficient. Like
Yeah.
just applying the Twitter
Correct.
example, if like you could post millions and millions of text, et cetera, et cetera. Okay,
Correct.
so we have content. Do we want to stick with just text-based content, or do we want to allow pictures,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
um, or
I feel
maybe even
more,
videos?
yeah, I feel more recent in 2022. It'll be weird not to have a text messaging system that doesn't
Yeah,
let you send images and
pictures. Yeah, and
pictures.
I
Yeah,
think it'd also be cool to build that out just so people can see what that's like. So
correct. Correct.
content type. Um,
Do we need
okay.
to know what the content type is? Because usually, image or a video is just a link to a URL, right?
Yeah.
Saves it somewhere in a database and just provides you some kind of link. It
Yeah.
might not be, yeah. So,
No, I think we do because like for example, so the content would hold whatever it is, right? If it's a picture, it could be like base 64 string or like a path to where it is on the server or whatever. It's all
mhm,
strings, which is another thing we probably should do is like add data types to these things. But it's
sure.
all strings, right?
Hmm.
But check this out. What if the content type is text, but somebody is sending a text message with the link inside of it, you know? because then you would have to parse it, right? Because if
Sure.
we didn't keep track of the content type, we'd have to parse it. And so what if there was regular text that had a link inside? We might think it's a video message and just not show any of the text and just show the video, or the image,
Sure.
that kind
Sure.
of stuff. So yeah, I think content type can be used for that, for knowing that. Okay, so we have the sender. We don't need avatar. Uh, what else? Content. We need to know the timestamp. That way we can like order
Oh
the
yeah,
messages.
timestamp for sure. Yeah.
I
So.
usually like to call them created at. Uh,
Oh yeah, that's a good name to call. So ID. I'm trying to think of what else can go in a message item.
hmm,
Uh, yeah, that's about it.
yeah,
Oh, does do we need to know what chat this belongs to? Does it need to reference the
that
chat ID?
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Chat ID, and it's a ref to chat. Yep, definitely. Okay, what else might it be referenced to? So if we wanted to know who sent the message, we can get that from the sender ID. If we wanted to know what chat to show it in, we can get that from the chat ID. Yeah, I think that's it. All right.
Mm.
Cool. Okay, so we have user, profile, chat, and message. So next, I'm sure in the future, like this doesn't have to be set in stone, but the first
Mhm.
iteration of the application we'd try and keep it to this scope as much as possible, just so like it doesn't blow up in our faces. And plus,
I agree.
the goal of this, I've said this before, but the goal of this is not necessarily to build an app that we're gonna make money from. It's more so the
Mhm.
conversations and the content. So this is simple enough. We'll leave it as this.
Exactly. Always best to
Um,
start simple and then build up from
exactly.
there. You don't want to
Yeah.
try to build up Facebook from your first try, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so let's start working on some of the relationships between these data entities. So I'll just take this, copy that, and let's work with uh, let's work with profile and user. I'm just gonna call this relationship as a, because I think that is appropriate. Let's move this to the center. Now this tool is pretty cool. I wish cause I was taking a class this semester, database design, and we kind of did very similar things to this. And we had one project where we had to build a schema for like a bunch of different scenarios, et cetera, et cetera. And I was
Mhm.
struggling to find a tool to use it. I don't know why I didn't think of this at that time. Um, but hindsight, it's always 2020. Captain Hindsight. Yeah. You get that reference?
No, not really.
South Park.
Captain Hindsight?
Captain Hindsight. Like
I don't think
whenever,
that's.
yeah, like whenever anything goes wrong, he's a superhero. He just comes and points out what everyone should have done to avoid the situation and goes away.
Is it even one of the newer episodes or?
I'm not sure actually. I think it's maybe 5 seasons from whatever the
Yeah.
new one
Oh man,
is.
I need to go back and watch it. But I feel
Yeah,
like every time
it's
I watch it for too long, I feel like I lose brain cells. So I try to take breaks in between when I watch it.
yeah, it's amazing. I wish these things were on the edges, but I don't know. I guess it works. Okay, so we're going to draw a relationship from user to profile. And it's going to be a one-to-one relationship because we want
One
um,
user has one profile, right?
exactly one user to have just a single profile.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the line and draw here. Cool. So I'm going to. Can I not? Let's
Can you
see.
make the line bigger?
There
Is
we
it
go.
possible if you click on it and increase the?
I. Uh. Oh, I think. What's going on here? What's going on here? Why is this jumping about? Just trying to increase the thickness of this line. Type. Maybe if I. Okay, yeah. There we go. That's much better.
Yeah, that's much clearer.
Uh-huh. Now I'm gonna increase the thickness of this one as well. And then the arrow. I want to make the arrow point in the other direction. No, not like that. Can I spin it around? Okay. Cool, that worked. All right, so one-to-one, a user has a single profile, and a profile belongs to a single user. Or a profile has a single user, either way. Okay, I think this is the only relationship that could exist between a user and a profile.
And just to be clear, that's what the arrowhead signifies, right?
Exactly.
The one-to-one relationship between
the direction of the relationship. Yeah.
Wow.
So now the relationships that exist would, from here on out, would be purely between profiles. And well, actually, no, that's not true, because we still need the user ID. Yeah. So let me move
user ID is
to
on
the
the profile
center.
though.
That's true. But then the primary, yeah, and this is the primary key. So yeah, we don't, yeah, you're right. Let me just underline what the primary key is. Can I do underline here? Okay, cool. So that's the primary key. Underline. That's the primary key. The primary key here. Underline. And here. Underline. Cool. Now we can tell what the primary keys are at a glance. So then I'm going to change this from user being referenced to a user to profile. This is acting up. What am I doing? Control Z. No, go away. Control Z. Thank God for Control Z. Okay. References profile. And references profile. Cool. All right. So then the next relationship, let's see. Let's explore relationships between chats and profiles.
So it's probably gonna be like a one-to-many, right? Because or is it a many-to-many?
It depends on what the relationship is. So like, for example, if we say like belongs to or is member, right?
Oh, chats. I think you should change your name to chat rooms rather than chats, because I was thinking of it as a message.
All right, that's true. Okay. Cool. So for the relationship that talks about membership, let's put that here because I suspect there'll be multiple relationships between chats and profile, or chat rooms and profile. So is member, that's a many to many, right? Because
yep. A user can be in many chat rooms, and many a chat room can have multiple profiles, multiple users in there.
Exactly.
So yes, I'll say many-to-many relationship.
Okay, let's get our.
So are we gonna use the user, or are we gonna use the profile?
We're gonna use the profile.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Let's get our handy dandy. So if it's many to many, this line should have no thing there. And then let's get another handy dandy line and connect it here, I guess, or here. Yeah, it works. All right, is member. So another relationship that could exist between profile and chat rooms is creator.
Oh yeah, yep.
And then
so that's going to be to one-to-many, because one profile can create multiple chat rooms. Correct.
Yeah. So it's one to many in the. It's always hard to think about which direction, or like saying it in which direction. But I guess we'll just draw it out and figure out saying it after it's drawn.
Correct.
So the many should come here because a profile can a user or a profile can create many chat rooms, but a chat room can only have one creator. So here, and we'll change that to an arrow. Okay. Now, are there any other relationships you can think of that profiles in chat rooms could share?
Yeah. So we're right now we're only assuming the creator is gonna be the only admin of that group, right? He doesn't appoint other admins for now.
Yeah, for now,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, these are probably the only relationships I can think of.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's move this up somewhere in the center. Cool. So now let's do message and profile.
And also messages can only be made in chat rooms, right? So it's not like you can have a one-on-one chat with a different user. Or would that be considered a chat room of just two people?
I mean, technically, yes, but on the data entity level, yeah, messages can exist without a chat room. And this is me remembering learnings from my class, even though, I thought I'd never use what I learned in that class for anything, but I guess it applies here. I think that is called like a weak entity set, in the sense that a message cannot exist without a chat room. Is that a weak entity set? Because the example they gave is more so like, you have a course and it has sections that the course has, and that's a weak entity set. Where it's like there's a relationship where in order for one thing to exist, it depends solely on this other thing existing.
Recently, I've been studying a lot of graph theory. That kind of sounds like a graph theory problem, sort of. Like one problem I solved yesterday on LeetCode. It's like you have a bunch of courses and prerequisites. So you can't take a course till you've taken the prerequisites. How many semesters would you need to take all the courses? What's the minimum number of semesters you would need to take all the courses? So that kind of sounds like a graph theory problem.
Yeah. So what? It's like you have the prerequisite relationship is like an edge from a course node to another,
Exactly.
right? And
Yep,
then you have what, like a list of courses that you're trying to get.
Correct. A list of courses. That's
Yeah.
exactly
So
how
I'm
it is.
trying to, and you have a limit to the amount of courses you can take in a semester?
So that wasn't a constraint in the problem, but yeah, that adds a layer of difficulty if you add that constraint. But so the problem I solved now wasn't you can take as many courses as you want. The only constraint was that you can't take a prerequisite till you can't take a course till you've completed this prerequisite. Correct.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what graph problem that immediately invokes, because like, okay, you have a list of places, nodes you want to visit, but you can't get to them.
Exactly. So it's literally just boils down to counting the longest number of edges. If you count the longest number of edges in that graph, that's your answer.
The longest number of edges.
Correct.
That's pretty much the depth of the graph, if I'm using my...
Exactly. The depth. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So a depth first search will be the best approach to it. It's not a breadth first.
Not a breadth first. That makes sense. Yeah.
Correct. But both will solve it, but it's just the more efficient one. Is
yeah. Because with breadth first, you'd go like wide before you
search deep.
Before
Correct.
But the thing I'm thinking is like, so is it given that the graph is acyclic? Like no cycles.
Exactly. The graph has to be acyclic.
It has to be. It's essentially
because of prerequisites.
Yeah, it's essentially a tree at that point. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you're just finding like the height of the tree.
It's typically not a tree because a tree has a. So two things about a tree. A tree has to have a specific root node, right? And there has to be only one path from the root node to any of the leaves in a tree.
Right.
However, even though this graph is acyclic, there's usually not only one path from any node. A node can take two paths to get to a different node. So that makes it a graph, not a tree. Does that kind of make sense?
So let's say there's two nodes, S, root R, and T, some arbitrary node. So you're saying that there can be two paths to get from R to T that can be like two distinct paths.
Okay. Exactly. Or there could be no path at all.
Or there could be no path
from R to T. Yeah, because they're not connected. So think of it like a semester where you're taking like Calc 1, Calc 2, and Calc 3. Obviously, they're all prerequisites, right? But then you also want to take microeconomics. So that's a tree where the microeconomics doesn't depend on Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3. So in that graph, they are not connected. There's no connection between Calc 1 and microeconomics. Microeconomics 1 has its own connection to probably like a microeconomics 2. You see what I'm saying? So maybe those are electives you have to take for the semester. But however, you can. So this is a graph. The longest part is going to be Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3. So that would mean you would have to take 3 semesters to take this because you can't take all 3 of them.
You can't take in the same semester.
But however, while taking it, you can also take microeconomics 1. You see what I'm saying? So that part, so there are 5 courses in this problem. So Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, microeconomics 1, and microeconomics 2. So these are the 5 courses. So what's the least amount of semesters you need to take all 5 of these courses? It's obviously 3 semesters, right? Because the longest edge is, so think of the graph as there's 2 separate connections, right? There's the connection of Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, just a straight line, right? And then there's a bottom connection of microeconomics 1 and microeconomics 2, which is not connected to Calc 1 and Calc 2. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in the first semester, you can take Calc 1 and microeconomics 1. In the second semester, you can take Calc 2 and microeconomics 2. And in the third semester, all you have left is Calc 3, and then you've graduated. Something like that.
Okay,
But
that
those
makes
2
sense.
graphs are kind of independent of each other. There's no connection between those 2 individual. So all you just have to do is find the longest edge in the graph, and you've solved the problem.
Yeah. I forgot that little tidbit about like the difference between a DAG, directed acyclic, versus a tree, and that makes sense. Is that with a graph, some nodes can be isolated, whereas with a tree, they can't. It has to be all connected from the root in a single path to every node. That makes sense.
Yeah. The only reason I remember is because I've been solving a lot of legal recently. Aside from that, I'll never remember that.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I can even have this conversation is because I've taken like 2 algorithms class, like the past, I took like algorithms 1 like 2 semesters ago, and then I took algorithms 2 this past semester. So yeah, I was lucky to pass that class, and glad it's in my rearview mirror. But yeah, this section of the video is probably gonna be it's probably a bit more technical than I wanted to get into, but what happened, it flowed naturally, and I'll probably I plan to chunk the videos anyways. So this would be like a chunk for all the nerds like us out there that just want to listen to this kind of stuff. But okay, awesome. So yeah, let's get back to the the relationship between profile and a message. So we'll call this is sender or something.
Exactly. Yeah, help and sender probably makes more sense.
Okay, so for this one, this is a many to many. Oh no, it can't be many to many. It's many.
Yeah, it has to be one to many, right?
Yeah. In one direction, it has to be 1. Yeah.
Exactly.
So a profile can send many. The line is backwards. Control Z. I was like, what's going on? So so the connection, a profile can send many messages.
Correct.
And that's no tip. But then a message can only be sent by a single profile. And this will get the arrow. Cool. And I think that, that does it. Any other relationship that might exist? I think that's just it, right? And that relationship is facilitated by the sender ID. Cool. And now we're going to have a relationship between a chat room and a message. And it's going to be very similar. I'm just going to call it belongs to, I guess. And this is going to be very similar to having a brain fart, to what we just did above. So a message belongs to a chat room can have many messages, right? So
correct.
This should be none.
But only a specific message has to mean a specific chat room.
Exactly. Has to belong to a specific chat room.
Correct.
So there should be an arrowhead here.
Correct. Yeah, it's looking good so far.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Any other relationships here? I think that's it, right?
Yep, that's really most of it I can think of right now, to be honest. Yeah, it's looking good. I like the flow.
Yeah. So just to give a recap, and I guess while we're adding types to all these things, because there was a moment I just realized that our windows might be blocking some of the content. So I reduced the size. I don't know if the viewers noticed, but yeah, we'll just go over each of the entities as we're giving them types just to make sure that we're not missing anything and that it's all good. Okay.
Hmm.
So email would be of type string.
Yeah.
Uh, Password also type string. Let's make this wider. ID would be of type string as well. And that's good. So this is the user entity. This is everything.
Hmm.
So we'll go to profile. Username will be of type string. Make sure this is in the center. And user, we are ID. We already have the type. It's a reference to the user entity.
I thought that cross there was more stuff in there.
Right? Did we
Yeah,
put
could you do Control Z multiple times and see what happens?
Control C? Oh, right. Profile pic. What did I do to delete the stuff that was in there?
Mhm.
I don't know. But now
You can do
this
Control
is
Y just to add back the strings you put.
yeah. I think on Mac is Control Shift. You
Oh yeah,
use
Control.
both, right? Yeah.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the only Windows. Wait, what just happened? It went away again. What's
Keeps
going
going
on
over.
here?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know what it is. Or do I? I don't know. Let me see. Can I expand this? Why does it disappear?
Try to click out of it, maybe because you clicked in it. Did that work?
No. Okay, so it's back now. And this is still there. That's good. So if I click into... Let me see. I'll expand you here. And I'll... Why can't I expand on the horizontal? For the folks over at Miro, I don't know if we're doing something wrong, but your
Mhm.
thingy thing is being difficult to work with. Okay, let's see. String. Okay, I think we've got past it. String. It's a colon. But yeah, I was gonna say, the Windows device I have is like a little Surface Go.
Mhm.
I pretty much use it to take notes in classes, and it's pretty much replaced the roll of paper. For
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
most
Same.
part
Mine
of
is the
what I do.
Surface Pro, so it's slightly bigger than the Surface Go. It's actually a powerful device. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty much. I really can't remember the last time I touched paper.
Mm-hmm.
So and that includes money too. So I haven't touched cash or any kind
Yeah,
of paper
that's
in a
true. I
while.
almost I almost never carry cash. That's funny. Like my Uncle Sam, he was
Mhm.
talking the other day, and this is hilarious. And so I think we were going to church. This was like last
Mhm.
Sunday, and then they asked if I had cash for like the offering box. I was like, oh no, sorry, I don't carry cash. And he ended up like giving me like $1. Just 'cause I didn't have cash, and then he was like, "Oh, you need to make sure you're always carrying cash. I know if someone comes and if someone comes and rob you now, you have to you have to have money that you give them. Otherwise, they'll just shoot you. otherwise, otherwise they'll just shoot you, boy." And then, oh man, he's so
If only you
funny.
had a dollar to give them.
Right, right. He's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, all right. So ID, um, the type is string. Latitude, this will be a number. Could be a string too, but yeah, let's make it a number. Have some diversity. Number, name would be string. Avatar would also be a string, like I think I'm spelling string wrong. Cool. Right. So let's look at message. Make sure this is in the center. The type is string. Content itself is going to be a string. Content type string, and then create as a timestamp. Cool. All right, so we have all our data members on the entities. We have all our relationships. Um, and yeah, this looks good. This looks solid. Okay, yeah. Can you think of anything that we might be missing?
This looks perfect to me. Well, let's not say nothing's perfect. We always have to
Right.
leave room for improvements, but this looks like a good start.
Yeah. And if not, I could always like look over it once we're done and see whatever and fix it, and I'll probably mention that in like a future video if that does happen. Cool.
Yep,
This is
yep,
great. This
yep.
is great. So yeah, I'm curious, and I'm sure people also watching would be curious to learn more about like for example, what the experience has been like working at Intel.
Mhm,
Because I don't know, I don't know if a lot of people know exactly what Intel does.
mhm.
Uh, and those who may know what they do may only think that it's just like one thing, like they make chips or whatever, right? So from
Mhm.
your insider experience, I guess what has it been like working there, and also what does the company get into in general?
Mhm. I feel like Intel is a really good company. According to Wall Street, it hasn't been good for the past 5, 6 years. But from the inside looking in, I feel like it's on a huge turnaround. With the new CEO, we hired a new CEO, I believe, in March of this year of 2021, and he's been doing some wonderful changes. He's been doing some wonderful changes. He increased the pay, obviously, which is what
Oh,
the
that's
employees
good.
like, for almost for for a bunch of the departments in Intel.
Hmm.
And he's really aggressively trying to. I like his position because the difference with some of these competitors, for instance, AMD is strictly a design company. They have a wonderful CEO, Little C. I believe she got hired in like 27. She got hired in 2014, but she actually became the CEO in like 2016 and 2017. And she's done an extremely wonderful job taking AMD from some $2 a share to, as of today, I think they're like a 100 and something.
Wow.
She's almost 200 times, up 100 times AMD almost. So she's done a wonderful job. AMD is doing good, but they stick strictly to design. They don't implement, kind of like the iPhone, right? Apple designs it, but they don't actually manufacture it. They send out the schematics to is it Falcon or whatever it's called, Foxconn. I forget what the company is called. That does the actual
Oh,
hardware. So
really?
that's
I
this
didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
So
they don't build the hardware themselves,
they don't
Apple?
use the hardware. They're strictly focusing on design.
Oh wow, I didn't
So,
know
a
that.
company like TSMC, which is the biggest semiconductor company as of today, I feel like they've been blessed because of their location. They're in Taiwan, but they strictly focus on design, on manufacturing, not design. So they don't design. They say, "Hey, you, everyone else design. Send us your schematics. We'll build it for you." That was a good approach. That's why they're technically the biggest. Plus, they're also in Taiwan. They get to don't quote me on this, but they get to pay their workers not as much. So,
Hmm.
but they have a bunch of good factories here in the US too. And also, Nvidia is the next biggest one. They've been doing an excellent job too. I like how they've been focusing on AI. So, I feel like they have the best focus on AI of any of these companies. They've been doing an excellent job. So, Intel is somewhere in between all these different facets. So Intel is choosing to be both a designer and a manufacturer. So Intel designs its own chip, and or at least that's the strategy our CEO Pat is going for. And they also taking the schematics from other designers and manufacture for these designers. I think that's our relationship with Microsoft. But I think it's a very good strategy because I see a lot of changes happening in the industry as far as companies are beginning to design their own in-house chips. So design is going away from typically in the past, a company will come to Intel or come to AMD and work with them to design a chip. But now a lot of companies are having application specific needs. So they're designing their chips themselves. So I feel like manufacturing would have to explode in the next few years, especially with the shortages that's going on now and everyone, Internet of Things coming on, AI exploding. So I feel like it's a good strategy to focus on manufacturing rather than just designing long term. So I like
Hmm.
how our CEO is doubling down on that. So I feel like Intel is a promising company from a turnaround standpoint. It is promising. However, if I was to advise people coming out of college, I don't think Intel is a company you want to come to, to be honest.
Ouch. You sure you want me? You sure you want me to leave that part in the
Yeah,
video?
yeah, you can leave it. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, it's just my opinion. Intel is an excellent place. It's
Mm,
wonderful. My team is wonderful. As far as work-life balance is extremely wonderful. However, I just feel I like what the new CEO is doing, and I need to take some time for some of these changes to come in, to take shape. But over the next 2 years, if your kid graduating, I wouldn't advise Intel to be top of your list. I'll
mm,
advise go for like a Google, or that's if you want to either go do one of the two things. Good for a startup for the knowledge and not the pay, or go for a good company for the resume booster and the pay. One of
mm,
those three. Intel is somewhere in between. It's what I'll advise someone coming out. Unless you just have a passion for semiconductors, then Intel might be the place for you. But other than
mm,
that, I would say go to one of those two extremes rather
mm,
than the in between. But I like my job at Intel. I'm trying to transition to a role that is more purely AI. Right now,
mm,
my AI contribution to Intel is just more of a side slash pathfinding project, not
mm,
more of my day-to-day deliverables. I see what's going on in the industry. I see how AI is shaping up. I see how more connected devices are coming on, and I think it's in my best interest long term to align my career with AI over the next 10 years, which is my actual New Year's resolution for 2022. Just go to a strictly AI role. So I like the company. I like the people. It's a one. I like the culture. It's just a wonderful place to be in, to be honest.
wow, that sounds awesome.
Mhm.
So speaking of like the chip manufacturing process with like have you so let me see if I understood you correctly. So right now they only design, they don't necessarily manufacture, or at least
They
that's
do
what they've
both.
been doing.
Intel does both. Both.
Okay. So like
That's
have you
AMD that does just design.
oh, okay, gotcha. So like have you been able to I guess get a inside view of what that looks like, the actual hardware manufacturing? Does it like have you seen that, and like could you describe that a bit?
Not so. I'm more on the testing side. So as far as once the manufacture is completed, I'm more of a software engineer that writes the software for uh, the tools that what's the word now? That kind of I'm more on the testing side pretty much. So I'm not on the manufacturing side. So I don't get to see the process of actual manufacturing. It's once the uh, product comes out, we write a whole bunch of test cases just to put it through a bunch of just for the tool to put it through a bunch of stress testing, temperature testing, a bunch of testing, and just to make sure the chips are good. So as
Mm,
far as the manufacturing, I'll be a wrong person to explain the manufacturing side of things. I do have a high level understanding of semiconductors and chips in general, but it's just a basic understanding you can get from your electronics professor in college.
mm-hmm.
So that's about the
You
knowledge I
call
have. I'm on
you
the software side.
you call that basic electronics professor in college? If that's basic, I don't know. I don't want to know what your expert level is.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did do electrical engineering like as your undergrad, right? Um,
correct.
and then you did a master's as well. What's your thoughts on like the importance or the value of a master's in the industry?
Mm, I think it's useless to be honest. So I think it might have been better if I took an actual internship for
Mm,
those 2 years rather than a master's. But don't get me wrong, I don't regret masters. I feel like today people kind of misunderstand the role of school. I feel like school should teach you how to learn, not necessarily teach you all the skills you need for the rest of your life. Technology changes so fast that I think the life now of any new technology you learn is about 4 years. I think after 4 years it becomes useless. You have to
mm,
keep learning constantly, updating your skills because new things are coming, new frameworks, new programming, new ways of doing things are coming. So you have to keep constantly learning. So I like the fact that my master's really taught me how to be an independent learner. Just sit on my own, create a structure, and research and learn. It taught me from that aspect. But other than that, I feel like a determined person doesn't really need to waste their time on a master's degree, is what I would say.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, I think so. Like you said, my bachelor's was in electrical. I think that's a waste of time doing electrical. If I could go back in time, I'll definitely do something more computer. But electrical and computer are so close. I feel like back in the if you go back to when the light bulb was invented, that would have been a good time to be an electrical engineer because a lot of things were being invented around, a lot of applications were being invented around the light bulb. Because when Thomas Edison invented the light bulbs, America and the rest of the world started to get wired for electricity, but strictly for the light bulb. So the whole world started to get wired. So back then, different pieces of technology like the washing machine came out, the person iron came out, just a bunch of applications of electricity started to blow up. That's where all the innovation was back then. So we passed the electrification era, and then we moved into the industrialization era, which was when the best thing to be back then was a mechanical engineer because what the assembly line was invented and it cut down the timing of building a car from like I think it was 12 hours to make one of the Model Ts before the assembly line was created. So they cut it down to about 90 minutes, something like that, uh, significantly low. So mechanical engineer was the best then. Planes were being mechanized, cars were being mechanized, everything was being mechanized. Now I feel like we're in the software age. If you're doing anything that's not related to software, to be honest, I think you're kind of wasting your time. So software is just eating up the rest of the world. It's just transcending every industry. I was reading a few years ago, about 20 years ago, a car was like 80% mechanical. Uh, so now cars are just becoming a lot more software based. And by software based, I mean the bill of materials for a car is going to move to about 80% needed for the transistors and the switches, which is pretty much what the software runs on, right?
Mhm.
So it's just incredible the change that's going on, and now so I just think software is a layer that everything is being built on top of, and AI is the next layer that's going to be above the software layer that everything will need to be built up on top of over the next 10 years. So I think the future is definitely very exciting from a software point of view, to more specific from a data analysis slash AI point of view. So it's definitely becoming more decentralized, and it's definitely a future for the people who are willing to keep learning new skills, keep being entrepreneurs and building, having these side projects where they build out things they've always wanted to build. I think it's going to be wonderful for these types of people.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very interesting to like try and predict where the future is going, and you talked about like the different eras of what's the right word now? Explosions of innovation, right? And how like we're in the software and AI is coming. Yeah, it's like it's very interesting just to think about, like like what's the future gonna look like if we're talking about like the latest buzzword that's been going around, like the metaverse and all that kind of
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and just like trying to imagine what that is, what that's gonna look like, how it's gonna be similar to things we've seen in the past. Because like to me, all I think the metaverse is just like a 3D version of the 2D web that we've come accustomed to. Like rather than seeing things on a screen on a physical device, we're
Hmm.
gonna have like hopefully like a single device, like a something you put on your face, like an Oculus, or maybe I think it'll get down to the point of like glasses that look and like feel just like these. Um,
Yeah.
and then you just see everything, because I know you bought an Oculus recently just to kind of get a
Hmm.
taste of what that's like, and I intend to buy one at some point. um and one of our older brother also bought one as well.
Hmm.
So just like I don't know, like just trying to think about it. I do you think in the future, like what do you think the role of the metaverse will be in the future, and also how do you see the devices that allow us to connect to it changing um, over time? And also, when do you think, how far away do you think it is from where we are now?
Yeah, so I'm really excited for the metaverse, to be honest. Yeah, I did buy Oculus. However, I feel like for the metaverse to get to where I think it needs to get to, the form factor definitely needs to change. The AR glasses need to be a big part of it. You need to be able to plug into the metaverse with just a regular, sleek looking pair of glasses, not necessarily bulky headsets, because it's not every time you would want to be fully immersed. Sometimes you want to be go about your regular day, but still be able to maybe look at your wrist and then chat appears of your text messages and you can send a text, or you can make a call and then talk with your glasses. You don't need phones to be, you don't need these bulky devices to be in your pockets and stuff, right? So I feel like we're definitely headed towards that world. As far as when is it coming, like you said, it's very difficult to predict the future. Each time you try to predict it, it ends up moving a different way.
Mhm.
But it's definitely something that needs to be built. I think it's necessary. It has to be built. I think it's going to create a similar explosion to what the mobile web created. So what do I mean by that? If you look at the internet, obviously the internet has been around since like what 1973, but it didn't really become mainstream till the early 1900s. I said 1900. Sorry, 1990s, where some of these companies like Amazon, where Facebook is not 19, Google, they started coming out, right? But you can see the web was first 2D, just a bunch of pages, very static pages where you just go to read blogs and stuff. So
Mhm.
as internet connectivity started getting faster, as the groundwork started being built, it started becoming more visual. I think it was what Instagram was created 2010, Facebook was 2005. It started becoming more visual where you post pictures and stuff. As connectivity speed started speeding up, it started becoming more streaming where you can watch your movies online, Netflix and stuff started becoming more mainstream, although they've been created a while ago. Now YouTube is like the go-to place, right, to consume, to get the real value from the internet, because everything is visual. We're visual creatures as designed. We like visual. So YouTube is the go-to place to get information and to share information. YouTube, Instagram, things like that. So there's obviously a next step, okay, and the next step has to do with some form of gaming, okay, because obviously gaming is one of the most difficult things to do online. It needs very strong connection, very strong internet, and all those things. So there's obviously a next step, and I think the next step definitely has to be the metaverse. What form is the metaverse going to take? We really don't know. It's something we're all going to have to build. It's something that will take a life of its own. We don't know exactly what form it will take, but I'm excited of the Oculus is one of the best pieces of technologies I've ever seen in my life. It's just wonderful. It's the only technology you can look at and be completely blown away by it, but at the same time, you still know it hasn't got to its potential
Got
yet.
to
You
its
still
foot.
know there's a lot of room for it to grow. So
Mhm.
it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. It's definitely a purchase I would never regret.
Mhm.
And I'm excited for the next version that's coming out this year, 2022. I'm definitely gonna hop on that and buy that. So the metaverse has my full support.
Mhm.
I'm trying to work on skills to contribute to be this. I feel it's very similar to about 2013 when Apple opened up the App Store,
Mhm.
or maybe like 2007 when Apple created the first iPhone. The first iPhone wasn't that good. It was a huge step from the regular phone, but it still wasn't that good. I feel like the first really good iPhone was iPhone 4, which was 2010, because that gave rise to a bunch of different companies like Instagram, like Airbnb, like Uber, just the fact that the internet, certain things had to come before these huge companies could have been built.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had to reach certain milestones with mobile and internet connection and just the strength and the ease of accessing the internet. So I feel like that's where the metaverse is headed to. We're still in early days. We haven't reached adoption. We haven't reached terminal adoption yet, but I
Mhm.
feel like it's inevitable. You can just watch it happen.
Yeah. I think one thing that will drive or lead to that adoption and something you touched on, like just the creation aspect of it. Like I recently picked up Unity for that exact purpose. For those of you who may
Mhm.
not know, Unity is like a framework that lets you build 3D games, not just games, but just 3D experiences. So you can use it for games, you can use it for anything. And like one of my goals, because I have a background with freelancing, and one of my goals is to get to a place where I can build 3D virtual spaces for people or businesses. Because one of my hypothesis, which could very well be wrong, but it's drawing based on what happened with the web, is that I think that people like how the way people in businesses have websites today, people in businesses are going to want to have 3D virtual spaces in in the metaverse where they can showcase their accomplishments or whatever, like their like
Exactly.
imagine a 3D GitHub but in 3D, or imagine
Mhm.
your personal website or your blog but it's in
On 3D.
3D.
Exactly.
instead, right? And also, like, imagine like you're ordering a pizza online, but instead of doing that, you can actually step into like a 3D restaurant that is Papa John's, and you
Hmm.
just like how you see the menus in real life, you can see it there. You can
Pick
make
out
your
the
order.
items
Maybe you
and they
can
get
even
delivered right to you.
maybe you can even knock out the cashier or something, just to add some fun in there, right?
Yeah,
Because it's all gonna
true.
be like
It's
3D.
so
So
cool. Yeah.
I feel like companies would be able to gamify it, and maybe they can even add like Easter eggs in there,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yep,
things
yep,
like
yep. I feel
that,
like,
right?
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, I totally agree. I picture a 3D Amazon where you can go
exactly.
into a store, pick up actual objects, look at them, put them in your cart, and
That
order it,
that
and you
yeah.
get your 2 day shipping. It comes right to you.
That
Yeah,
would be so amazing. Yeah, like you can
exactly.
actually
Like
look at the thing you're doing, and yeah, that would be so awesome.
exactly. Like a 3D Nike, you go in there, you pick up the shoe, look
Hmm.
around, put in your cart, order, it comes to you. Yeah. So
Exactly.
I definitely see use for things like that, or like just creators these days, right? Like a influencer on like YouTube or Instagram. They really don't have a social media has done a lot, first of all, but they still don't have a good way of reaching to their audiences. Just imagine a creator being able to launch a product and invite some of their fans for a launch party where everyone is just in the 3D world in the same space, hanging out and having a party.
Yeah,
That's
that's
that's that's literally a blast. They'll also be able to sell digital items, exclusive items digitally. So it's just
oh
commerce is out of
a 3D OnlyFans.
yeah, I know. I thought about that. Yeah, I thought about that. I saw a comment like that on YouTube. Like, yeah, I was like, man, that's
Of a
classic.
3D
So
OnlyFans.
yeah, just
That'd
being able
be
to treat the OnlyFans is gonna be wild. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this future
yeah.
we're about to get into. And yeah, it's
And
wonderful. It's just so much space for creators and
mhm,
developers to build out this future. So much
yeah.
money to be made.
Mhm. And then on the device end of things, like I look at the Oculus today, and sure, it's clunky and it's like big and all that kind of stuff, and I feel like maybe it's like one per household. Like it's kind of, it feels like a console almost, where it's like one per household. But I think in the future, kind of like how phones first happened, where you had like a single landline per household or like a single big phone per
Exactly.
household. I feel like as it gets smaller and more ergonomic, we're gonna get to a place where everyone has one.
Has
Like a
one.
family, they all have like some sort of
Exactly.
glasses that they use,
Exactly.
et cetera, et cetera. I think it'll get to that, and once it gets there, that's when we'll really hit like the critical mass of like, oh my god, um,
Exactly.
people taking it seriously, and like everyone wanting to be on the platform, which is part of the reason why I'm building this skills, because I'm hoping to set myself up to be kind of like a freelancer,
Mhm.
if nothing else, at the very least, a freelancer who's like building experiences and ideas. Because I'm sure, just like how everybody and their mother has an app idea right now, everybody and their mother is gonna have some kind of metaverse experience idea that they want to
Idea.
build. Um,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Exactly.
definitely something to look forward to.
Exactly. The future is bright and interesting for anyone willing to put in the work to learn the skills for this future. So yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. There's so much stuff to build. It's just exciting to be a part of this.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, I know like you're kind of big into investing, and so am I. And I actually, getting into the stock market was my New Year's resolution for 2021.
Mhm.
And starting, and I know you're one of the people that I've come to for like a lot of advice on like what companies to get into, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, how what was your experience getting into it like? What are some things you have your some companies you have your eyes on nowadays, and what's like kind of been the highs and lows of your journey so far?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, with investing, it takes a while, unless you have someone that you really trust and can look up to kind of guide you. It kind of takes a while to figure out what I think is a good strategy and a winning strategy.
Hmm.
So how I like to see this, investing is not difficult if you have a long-term horizon. So picture this. I look back around 2012 when I first started seeing some of these companies. So 2012 was the first time I used PayPal. It's the first time I used Amazon. First time I used eBay. First time I used Square. I could keep going along some of these life-changing technologies that started to come out around this, that started to become popular around this time. Um, so I did a I cannot look back and say, hey, what if I invested in all these companies that amazed me back then? How much would I have today? So I took all these companies, including Apple. I think the first time I had an iPhone was 2014, maybe 2013 was my first iPhone. So I took this basket of companies, about 5 or 6 companies, and then calculated my returns if I invested in them in 2012 when I first used them. And I think I averaged about almost 10 times, 10x, 10x, 9x, something like that. So meaning if I had, let's say, obviously I was a college student back then, so I didn't have up to $10,000. But say I had $10,000, I just bought the stocks at random and just sat back and did absolutely nothing, right? Today, it'll be more than 10 times the amount. So that $10,000 will become $100,000 by just sitting down and doing nothing, right? So again, some companies are better than others. Say I took that 10,000 and put it only in Amazon, right? It would become almost $200,000 because Amazon's almost 200x since then. Again, some companies like eBay weren't as good. Is I think eBay is only like 8 times or 7 times, but the average is 10x. So my point is, I like to take the approach of saying, okay, what are some pieces of technology that amaze me today? Since those pieces of technology that amazed me 12 years ago, 10 years ago, have 10x my money today, I think it's going to be the same. What amazes me now, I believe is going to 10x my wealth 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So this piece of technology, some technologies that made me first is the Oculus. So I'm working on making Facebook a huge part of my portfolio. Tesla cars, what they're doing with energy, how they're trying to save the world is amazing me. So Tesla is my number one in my portfolio as of today. Another good one is Palantir. I've been looking into them now. Again, I don't use any of their products, but just my thesis of data being the new oil, and whoever has access and can understand the biggest and most complex data would be a leader in this new world we're transitioning into. So that's why I have Palantir, because they do data analysis for governments on a huge scale. So Palantir is right now my second biggest in my portfolio, but they'll probably end up being my third if I can make Facebook my first. Airbnb is another good one. I like what they're trying to do with the travel industry, but I'm kind of conflicted between Airbnb and Uber. I have to pick one, but right now Airbnb is the one I picked, but it might change to Uber because I really like Uber. What you're doing with Uber Rides and Uber Eats and just what you're doing in general, I really like it. And I believe Robinhood too is one of the ones I really like because again, I like what they've done with the whole investing in general and what they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
do in the crypto space. So yeah, that's look at your day-to-day life. What products wow you? What products do you think have changed life as you know it, or will change life as you know it in the future? And investing is always risky. You have to take some risks. It might not pan out the way you want to, but the thing with investing is all you have to do is get one right and get it. When you're right, be very right. I think it will make up for all the wrong calls you make.
All of them, yeah.
And also, I advise against diversity. Be as not diverse as you can, especially starting off. I feel like diversity, in the words of Warren Buffett, is just a protection against ignorance. If you trust yourself to be able to learn and you're not ignorant, don't diversify if you can. That's why I only have 5 stocks in my portfolio, and I don't think I would ever go past 5. I just ask myself, what are the biggest 5 that I think can make me the maximum return, or can create the world I would like to live in? Those are the 5 companies I invest in. I believe when you start getting to like 10 or 20, I believe it starts to get kind of dangerous because you can't keep track on what these companies are doing. You can't keep track on
Mm-hmm.
the advancements they're making. It starts to get difficult. Plus, I feel like you should only diversify when you've got to your wealth goals. Then you want to protect yourself against losing.
Preserve the money, yeah.
Exactly, preserve. It's a formula for preservation, not for growth. So I try not to diversify.
Yeah, that's very counterintuitive to like a lot of strategies that people use, and it definitely seems like yours is, and mine too, because mostly I get
Mhm.
the most of my information and strategies from you is just like the long term game, right? Just saying,
Exactly.
okay, just pick a few winners that you think are gonna blow up, and then just wait. Just toss your money in them and close your eyes. But
Exactly.
I know for me, there have definitely been moments where it's like it's been hard to close your eyes, where it's like things are going down. Like earlier in the summer when Bitcoin like dropped to like almost half of what
Mhm.
of its high at like 60, and then Tesla was also dropping too, and it was just like I was just in the red, like losing money, losing like I lost all my profit, actually losing part of my initial investment, and like it's just
Mhm.
a scary feeling. And and there've also been like insane like opportunities, like I don't know if I should call it missed opportunities, with like the whole Wall Street Bets group and like GameStop and AMC. I think that was 2021, or was that 2020 when all that happened?
That was early 2021. Late 2020 was when it kind of started, but yeah,
Yeah.
early 2021. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
just like to have like invested money in there and just watch it just
Mhm.
grow in that time, that would have been
Mhm.
so amazing.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, that would have been awesome. I feel like most people, I know if you go on Wall Street, right, you see many people post like they actually capitalized on it, but most people didn't, to be honest. Only
Mm.
a few people did. I know I got into GameStop around $5. I
Oh
bought
wow.
GameStop. I sold out at 10,
Mm.
and I bought back in at 10 again. I sold out at 35 because I had like
Wow.
3x my money, 4x my money. But again, I didn't have which most people fall into this case. I didn't have the confidence to invest life-changing money, right? So I only put in like $1,000. My $1,000 became $2,000. I sold out. Put back in $1,000. That $1,000 became 3,500, and I sold out. Right? I didn't have the confidence to put in like $100,000 or all my
Mm.
life savings in it. That's where you'd have made the life-changing money. So yeah, I made maybe like $4,500 in total off GameStop, but that's not life-changing money. That's money you still show up to your job the next day.
Right.
It's not life-changing. So I feel like most people that actually took advantage of that fell in that bracket. They weren't confident enough to put in all their life savings in it. Which rightfully so, right? It's a very risky play. I really believed GameStop was going out of business because um, there was a pandemic, stores were shut down. Um, Almost every company that did not have a internet strategy was almost dying. Um, Microsoft with the Xbox, PlayStation with Sony with PlayStation, they were pretty much releasing all their games digitally, right?
Digitally.
Exactly. So I literally believed GameStop was great. It took a bunch of confidence or maybe just being stupid to invest in GameStop at that period. And people really don't know the history of Wall Street bets. People think it's a bunch of smart people on there, but really that group was created for stupid people to lose as much money as possible. And literally, they tell you that that's the aim of the group, who can post the biggest losses in the market. That was literally why they were created. So I feel like they just happened to see an opportunity with GameStop so that it was shorted so much
Mm.
and a bunch of people piled in to lose as much money as possible. It wasn't to make as much money as possible. That was not the idea. The whole idea of the group why it was created was who can post the biggest losses in the stock market.
Why would
So
anybody want to be a part of that group? Like what?
it's funny. It's funny to share misery. Once everyone is sharing misery, it seems to be funny. You post a $10,000 loss, $100,000 loss, and
What?
see who
How is
can beat me. So that was literally the whole creation. Like pack your whole life saving and
mm.
risk it on something very risky where it's most likely going to go to zero, but there might be a slight chance that you it's 100x's. That's literally the aim of the creation of that group.
Yeah.
But
I
it
feel like
ended
it's
up
for a bunch of rich people then. Like
it is for typically
I thought the idea was like, just about the everyday people who
typically
tried to fight
yeah
against
typically
Wall Street and
Nah,
all.
that was not the idea. I remember when I first joined Wall Street Bet, which was in 2020, around September of
Mm.
2020, October. Back then, it was still just a million followers on the thread.
Yeah.
But right after the GameStop saga, that exploded to like 10 million followers,
Wow.
like 10 times, because everyone was jumping in,
Well, it's
thinking they could make money in there. But by then, it was too late. The money
yeah.
had already been made. Everyone who jumped in lost money. Everyone else.
Mm.
But yeah, I was lucky to get in early. But like I said, I didn't have the confidence to invest life
To
changing
stay.
money
Yeah.
in GameStop, so I just took a nibble on it.
That makes
But yeah,
sense.
it's I feel like it's a huge iconic time in the history of investing that just shows the power of the individual investor. They have the power to really gang up and
Mm.
kind of make something happen in the market, which was literally what Wall Street Bet did. So yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, definitely. I also wish I had invested a few life-changing stuff in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been recording for quite a while now. I think this has been a great recording session. I'll definitely milk as many different episodes or different videos as I can out of this. I think this video alone can set me up for like content to post for like the next month or two. Maybe
Probably. I agree.
two is a stretch. More like the next month. If I'm posting like once a week, more like the next month. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you're busy doing a lot of skill building and studying, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate the time. Yeah, this is great. Do you want to leave any either social media handles or a LinkedIn or website or anything that you want people to connect with you or see your work from or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll definitely send you a link to my YouTube channel,
Oh,
where I
YouTube
just,
channel. Mm-hmm.
yeah, solve a bunch of lead code problems, because right now I'm practicing lead code a lot. And I also I have a plan to go into more talking about AI and teaching AI in general, and machine learning and deep learning on there in 2022 is part of my goals for 2022, to teach a lot
Mm-hmm.
more AI, because I found out the best way to learn something is to actually teach it. It's counterintuitive in a way, because you feel like maybe you have to understand something completely before you teach it, but I think it's actually a virtuous cycle where teaching it makes you understand it more, understanding it more makes you a better teacher at it, and the cycle just goes on and on.
Goes
And
on.
before you know it, you become an expert. So yeah, I'll leave a link to my Instagram. I'm sorry, not my Instagram, my YouTube and my LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So yeah, go check out his stuff. It's really great stuff for anyone who wants to learn and take things seriously. Whether it's lead code, like you said, AI, or if you want to connect on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, thanks again for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.